BioTools Innovator Live, our webinar series. We're going to give it a couple minutes to let people in, and we will start shortly. All right, I see we have people coming in. Give it a minute or so. All right, I see we have people coming in. Give it a minute or so. All right, I see we have people coming in. Give it a minute or so. All right, I see we have people coming in. Give it a minute or so. All right, I see we have people coming in. Something going on loop there. Minute or so. All right, I see we have people
I think Ari needs to turn his mic off.
there. Minute or so. Ari, can you mute yourself? All right. Okay, I think we're ready to start. So with that, let's kick it off. All right. So hi, everyone. Welcome to BioTools Innovator Live, our webinar series, our summer webinar series, I should say. Welcome, everyone, the attendees, the cohort companies for BioTools Innovator 2023, and our wonderful panelists for today's webinar on strategic partnerships and how to partner with strategics. We'll introduce the panelists shortly. I'm Ayelet. I'm the program director for BioTools Innovator and senior director of programs at MedTech Innovator. We are streaming this webinar and others to come live on YouTube and LinkedIn. And so for those of you not familiar with BioTools Innovator, I'll do a brief introduction. So BioTools Innovator is the first ever accelerator to focus on life science tools and molecular diagnostics. We're purposefully designed to foster and support entrepreneurs that are developing a broad spectrum of biotechnology products, platform technologies, and services that are enabling the future of healthcare. And so this is our third year in existence, and we are powered by MedTech Innovator. MedTech Innovator has been around for 11 years now. It is a nonprofit accelerator, the biggest life science accelerator in the world, actually, fostering a fantastic portfolio of over 600 companies now across the medtech, digital health, life science tools, and diagnostics sectors. We've, like I said, have fostered a very successful portfolio thus far, over $7 billion in follow-on funding. 95% of our companies are still in business or has been acquired, and we have 38 acquisitions to date and counting. So no pressure companies, but you know. So with that, I think we can jump straight ahead to talking about strategic partnerships. So as we all know, this is one of the most popular topics in our webinar series, and for a great reason. One of the common ways to get to market, and one of the common ways for companies to succeed in getting their product to the market is partnering with strategics, obviously. And so in today's panel, we have a really interesting mix of strategics from different types of companies. So we have pharma companies, we have a unique model within a pharma company, and a strategics and one of the biggest tool strategics in the sector. And so with that, I'd like to first thank our panelists for being here. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. So we have with us Tari Suprato. I hope I said that correctly. So Tari is the Director of Search and Evaluation at Novo Nordisk. We have Jose Resco. He's the Director of Strategy and Business Development of the Bioscience Division for Thermo Fisher Scientific. Hi, Jose. And we have Jeff Hennigan. He's the Executive Director and the co-founder at Merck Digital Science Studios. So hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. So I will start with, how about we start with a brief introduction? I'll let each one of you introduce yourself briefly, a little bit about your background, what you do, and your role. How about we start with you, Tari?
Great. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. As mentioned before, so Tari Supropto, I'm part of the search and evaluation team at Novo Nordisk. I have a regional focus on the Western US and Canada. And what search and evaluation means for my company is to identify business opportunities in the form of assets and enabling technologies. We are a pharmaceutical company focused solely on generating best-in-class therapeutics for cardiometabolic disease and particular types of rare diseases. And where life science tools comes into play is in that category of enabling technologies, and strategic partnerships, including feasibility studies as well as pilots, are a great entryway for my company to get comfortable with new technologies, but also to build a very strong and positive and preferably productive relationship. So pleasure to be here.
Tari, pleasure having you here. How about we go with Jeff next?
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for inviting me to join y'all today. So yeah, I'm Jeff over at Merck and the Merck Digital Sciences Studio. My background is scientific, so studied cell and molecular biology at the bench, and also from there, as many do, transitioned over to the computational biology side with a lot of work in immunology and microbiology and machine learning sort of stuff. Did a lot of publications as well as a patent in that space. Also have some experience in biotech advising and working with business development. Currently, I serve two roles. So on one side, I serve as Director of Business Technology Partnerships internally here at Merck. And then I also serve as Executive Director of the Merck Digital Sciences Studio, which is a startup accelerator program that we run in collaboration with it's Merck as well as our GHI Investment Fund, Microsoft, McKesson, North Pond Ventures, and the New Jersey Institute of Technology. So really excited to be here today.
Thank you, Jeff. We're very excited to have you here. And last and certainly not least, Jose, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, and thanks for having me be part of this discussion. It can be challenging to figure out how to work with large companies like ours, so I'm always happy to shed whatever light we can. As you mentioned, my name is Jose Haresco. I am a Director of Strategy and Business Development within Thermo Fisher's Biosciences Division. My role and those of my peers in this role is really to accelerate the revenue growth trajectory of the businesses we support. To do that, we collaborate with our colleagues in R&D and product management to identify and evaluate new technologies, but we own the end-to-end execution of that process, most notably on the negotiation side and the contracting side of those efforts. My background is in the life sciences. I did my PhD in bioinformatics and computational chemistry at UCSF. My entire professional career, though, has been in healthcare corporate finance before I transitioned to industry, first at J&J and now here at Thermo. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you for being here. So with that, I think let's just dive right in. And Jose, since you touched on it a little bit in describing your role, how about we start with you? What are kind of different ways that your organization thinks about innovation, external and internal? And how do you actually work with early stage companies in the different models at Thermo Fisher?
Sure. That's an excellent question. External innovation is pretty core to the biosciences group. Those of you who have been in the industry for a while will probably most associated with what used to be the old life technology company. And so if I think about external technologies in some of our groups, it contributes almost 30% of our revenue growth over time. So it's quite a contributor. It spans different, when you look across Thermo, it's a little bit more haphazard, but certainly for our division, it's very important. Leaving aside M&A for a moment, which everyone knows we do, in order of preference, we tend to look at OEM distribution first, then to licensing, then to co-development, and then strategic investment. And while I bucketed those into 4 or 5 discrete categories, most of the time they're always some variation that includes all of that.
Well, thank you. That's really great to know. I mean, that 30% number, first of all, is really encouraging, I'm sure, to everyone on the other side of this call. But also knowing kind of the different types of partnerships that you have, and I'll take that over to Tari now with a little bit of a different profile, right? In a pharmaceutical company, how do you at Novo Nordisk think about external and internal innovation, bringing in innovation from early stage companies, and you have to working with early stage companies, and maybe specifically also touch on, since it's not the only type of.
Sorry, you kind of got muted here and there, but I think I can answer the question. So, to give a little bit of context, right? So Novo Nordisk is actually been around for a long time. We just are celebrating our 100th anniversary today, and for a good portion of that time, we've made our business, primarily with peptide and protein modalities. We focused on the treatment of diabetes. Still today we provide about half of the world's supply of insulin, as well as insulin analogs, and of course semaglutide is one of our major products out there today under various brands and names, depending on formulations and whatnot. So first and foremost, a therapeutics company. Diabetes and obesity are our top, what we call our bread and butter areas, with chronic cardiovascular disease, a very small distance behind. And that's another thing, is that for a very long time, solely being focused on diabetes as well as rare blood and rare growth disorders, Novo Nordisk made the strategic decision to expand into multiple therapeutic areas in the cardiometabolic space. So the cardiovascular, NASH, chronic kidney disease, and so on. And so expanding into different diseases, and then also getting a better understanding that different targets are better addressed with different modalities, means that we've also grown and continue to grow into exploring other modalities, including small molecules, RNA, gene editing, gene therapy, cell therapy. So it makes for a very exciting time, but changes also can be very disruptive, as I think my colleagues can attest. As Jose mentioned, acquisition is one of the ways we do things. However, as a pharmaceutical company, and how it's relevant to you all in this cohort, as I've mentioned before in my intro, is that we really look at enabling technologies that we have probably not a lot of expertise in, and we fully realize that in order to become a leader in these new therapeutic areas, we are going to have to externalize significantly. A good portion of our pipeline, and that's part of my mandate, is going to come from the outside. And so we are encouraged to build awareness, to do a lot of landscaping into different technologies, new modalities that we may not have been aware of before. And again, right, if you're not the expert, then go find the people who are really good at it and make them into your friends and your partners. And so we try to be very flexible in terms of how we model those relationships. Again, with anything that's new, we are big fans of doing small scale, focused, narrow pilots. Again, trying to do some mutual de-risking together. And if things go well, right, it's the whole principle of like, we are going to succeed. We're going to succeed together, right? And so that's one of the things that we like to do, and it can be something that's super collaborative, or something as simple and straightforward as a transfer of our material to you or your material to us, and then we see where it goes. But we try to be very fair in how we share the results of those types of studies, and again, with the goal of building that relationship, becoming the preferred partner personally, my goal is always I'm going to be the first one you call when you have something new and exciting and particularly relevant. And even with early stage companies, I'm always happy to take the first conversation because, everything can change within 6 months, 12 months, right? And I think we're going to talk a little bit about communication as we go along. So the structure of the relationship has to just make sense for, and it's very much a fit for purpose. So I can't generalize, particularly broadly, but that's a general principle for our company.
Thank you, Tari. And we'll definitely get back to some of the things you've kind of started touching on, as well as that point about de-risking together. So that's an important one where we had a lot of questions on. But I think that's a good transition to Jeff to hear a little bit about your unique model and how you work with early stage companies.
Yeah, absolutely. So Merck works with external groups and startups and early stage companies, very similar, right, to how other companies do. The somewhat unique aspect that I'm involved in is through the Startup Accelerator program. And so the idea is to just take an alternative avenue, right, and a supplementary avenue to those engagements. So we launched the program, the Merck Digital Sciences Studio, last summer. And what we do is we take in 12 very early stage startups per year. So we're looking at seed, pre-seed types of companies. Anyone in the space of digital enablement of drug discovery and development, which is definitely a wide remit, which is exciting because we get to work with a lot of different types of companies working on a lot of really cool solutions. Startups that come in, we provide $150,000 as safe. That's just cash in the bank when you start. Sometimes people ask me, how much does it cost to be a part of the program? It's the opposite. We pay you to be a part of the program. You also get $150,000 additional dollars worth of free Microsoft Cloud Compute. The startups always also get access to our executives and residents, free office space. We operate out of Cambridge and Kendall Square, as well as Newark, New Jersey on the NGIT campus. Real easy access into New York there as well as a lot of networking opportunities, learning opportunities. We do a lot of workshops and series to help founders at these early stages understand and bolster their acumen in the different areas it takes to run a successful company. We run that program for, I say a year, it's about 10 months. And then, of course, I'll also plug applications are open now. So if any founders are listening and they like the sounds of that, please do check us out at mds.studio.
And in kind of full disclosure, we already have one of our companies.
Yes. Yeah.
The first cohort of MDS at NBDS, and we're actually the introduction to you. So we're all about this network. I will follow up with a quick question to you. What is kind of the advantage that you see from your side in partnering with companies through an accelerator rather than the more traditional model?
Yeah. So we get to work with very early stage companies, which is exciting. We get to accelerate them towards being a bit more mature of companies and more fit for some of those other types of engagement models. So we look at really early stage, and the goal is to just accelerate them to that kind of next level of maturity towards kind of Series A, that sort of thing. So that's really what we look for is advancing.
Right, fantastic. I think I'll jump into a general question, but it's really, there's no webinar as whole without this question, I feel. So maybe let's start with you, Jose. Given the economic environment, not to say downturn, we all know, it's no secret there are challenges in the biotech, in the pharma industry, in the life sciences, right? And other industries. how has that impacted partnering with early stage companies, both on the acquisition investment side and just partnering in different models? Or has it impacted?
Yeah, it certainly has impacted us. I think, my colleagues would also say the same. And you think about what's going on now, and you think about where Thermo and other companies like us live, right? We largely live in the R&D line of any P&L. So when our customers decide to pull back on that spend, it naturally affects us. And so all the prioritization that you see at the pharma biotech level, we end up doing the same thing. And so the phrase that gets tossed around these days is hyper prioritization. So in an era of cost containment, what it means for us is I think that the environment for BD actually gets better because we tended to have less to spend internally. So consequently, we see a lot more M&A coming through the pipe. I don't think we've ever, we were busy during COVID. We've been substantially busier now in terms of flow. That doesn't mean we're doing any more transactions. It just means that there's more to do. If you imagine the deal funnel that we look at, right, that funnel at the top has gotten a lot wider across any type of deal structure, but the bottom end of the funnel has gotten a lot narrower because the businesses are prioritizing internal spend, external spend. And so there's a lot more analysis, scrutiny, evaluation, and vetting that goes on beside in terms of how we pull a deal. That constant balancing against existing priorities is absolutely real. And so one of the questions that we often get is, well, you're Thermo, you're Danaher, you're Agilent, you guys have quote a lot of money. But at the end of the day, each business unit, even each product manager has to decide, is it this external deal that I'm looking at, or is it my internal one? And in today's environment, that choice is tougher. And so from a deal structure perspective, I don't think it necessarily changes the type of deals we do, but it changes who we work with, right? So we are tending to prioritize near revenue or early revenue generating companies where we are looking at more de-risked assets. We're spending a lot more time doing technology transfer into our labs and to really put a tech through its paces before we pull the trigger. Because this is a fairly de-risked environment. And so you see that across M&A, licensing, all the kinds of deals that we do.
And then are there specific areas that, within that hyper prioritization, as you mentioned, are there specific areas where you have completely kind of shut the door versus others, or is it across?
So, yeah, I don't know if it's we've totally shut the door, but I think as an industry, when you look at, say, we're in a post-COVID continuum now, right? The endemic. It's not surprising that we and other companies like us would have maybe started to deprioritize technologies that only have a clinical application. We're going back to where it was before COVID, where we're really starting to focus again on the research sides of the business to serve the Mercks, to serve the Novo Nordisk of the world, because almost a lot of the investment across our ecosystem over the last few years was largely focused on COVID. But now that we're coming out of it, science has to progress, right? Think of all the big buzzwords, AI, ML, spatial omics, single cell. A lot of the development happened a little bit in the background. It was there during COVID, but now we can prioritize those and other spaces coming out of it, and even new things that happened, right? The focus on automation, on high throughput labor, on high throughput technologies, even labor shortages. These are new concepts that emerged out of COVID that we now have to try and tackle, because not just because COVID may come back or another form of it, but these are differences in the way our customers are working that we now have to address.
Thank you. I think that's great. That's a great level of detail that I'm sure everybody here is really excited to hear about. And I think, let me jump to Jeff with kind of the same question. it will be the same question to you, Tari. I guess from your perspective in a pharma company, there's also the question of tools versus assets, right? So the actual drug targets. Is there anything happening there in that balance when talking about prioritization? Jeff, you start.
Yeah, it's a good question. Balancing that prioritization between tools and assets, I'd say it's always a constant discussion across groups. And as Jose said, right, there's a lot of different groups involved in that type of, a lot of different levels involved in that prioritization. Yeah, it's one of those things that I see just kind of always being discussed. There's always different perspectives. I'm not sure there's been any singular trend. I find it to be fairly quickly moving. But your point was a good one about the differing economic climate that we find ourselves in. You did make me think of, from our perspective, trying to help out startups through the accelerator program. It is a space that we aim to be helpful in, and I'm kind of glad that we're around doing it right now. There's one comment I got in the early days of putting this together, when things were better, right, in the economy, and the feedback I got, I said, look, we want to provide some funding to these startups to help them get going. And at one point, the sentiment was kind of, why? Who cares, right? I can go out and get money. It's not a problem. That's not valuable. And so I thought, well, okay, maybe not today, but that it could be different. And now it is different, right? And so I'm glad that we provide that, and we are here to be at least one resource for companies.
Thank you, and I'll turn the same question to Tari. Perspective.
Yes. So do you want me? I can attack the sort of tools versus assets thing to build up on what Jeff said. So in complete honesty and disclosure, assets are always going to be at the top of our list. As mentioned, we are about therapeutics and putting out the best drugs possible, and we just happen to be working in a very cut and competitive set of fields. But considering our audience, right, where do tools become important? And it is clearly going to be in the earlier stage of teeing things up into the beginning of the pipeline. And so I do a fair amount of what I call internal networking and talking to my scientists in the different therapeutic areas, in the different, we have a whole division called Global Research Technologies, and they're the ones that look at the platforms. They're the ones that are looking at chemistry and biology. And I think one thing in particular that's particularly relevant, right, is we're very interested in discovering new targets, but being able to do that efficiently and effectively. And that's where the companies that have computational approaches to be able to analyze clinical data sets, and be they from the literature or even from our internal trials, that's an area that is of high interest, and we have some partnerships already in that space. But they tend to be very, in this particular case, it's very specific. So we are talking to other potential partners for other angles. After discovery, you have validation, right? And validation, one of the trickiest parts is the translation, right? So a lot of mouse models, which are often considered canon, actually aren't that great. So we're actually trying to figure out a way, one, to move away from excessive and wasteful animal use. Are there better cellular-based assays? Right? And there's a definite uptick in the sophistication of those assays and instrumentation. I think, Jose, you agree with me, like there's a lot of miniaturization as well that also gets the costs down significantly, right? And then after target validation, you have your drug screening and as part of that discovery process, we're also just really interested in sustainability, right? That's one of the biggest philosophies at my company. So how do we reduce waste? How do we become essentially circular zero in both in our research processes as well as in our manufacturing? And so there's a lot out there, and sifting through that universe is it's a big lift. But a lot of my scientists are extremely smart. They read the literature, they talk to lots of people, and they come to me and they're like, can you get us in touch with this company, right? That makes my life easier, right? And then it's just a matter of getting the people, into a virtual meeting room or a face to face, and then everything follows on from that. I will say that in this environment, our inbound is huge. I mean, there are so many of you out there that are looking for a strategic partnership because the more traditional fundraising mechanisms, it's just become way more competitive. I mean, you talk to any investor today and they're all going to say, we're focusing on our portfolio companies, and if we're going to look at new things, they've got to be absolutely phenomenal. And we're actually not that dissimilar, right? If we're going to take on something that's new and external, it has to be differentiated. And I can't say to you all enough in the audience, please get your messaging super crisp, super clear, and communicate to us how you are different and better and infinitely more enabling than anyone else out there. Because if you can't cut through that noise, it will get lost.
We'll just plug here that this is what Jeff and BioTools Innovator exists for, and other accelerators. So hopefully we're doing that. I will use that kind of segue that you provided here, Tari, to put on my startup hat. And you talked a little bit about, inbound right now. The inbound is naturally bigger right now. So if I'm putting on my startup hat, what's a good way to rise above the others in that inbound, right? So how do we really, how do we know what is really your interest? So I think, Tari, you touched on a little bit of what's your interest. I want to take it to Jose, a very different type of strategic partnership. How do you really know as a company, what are your real strategic interests? What's your prioritization, especially in these kind of dynamic times? And what's the best way to find it and approach it?
It's 100% driven by the business. Mm-hmm. It's, I can have my ideas, my peers can have ideas, and we obviously influence strategy and we work with all our counterparts to develop strategy. But the businesses drive technology road mapping. And so everybody has a view of where they want to be in the next 5 years or 10 years. 10 years is a long time, call it 5 years. But in terms of where we need to be in 2 years versus 5 years, we have clear technology priorities. Do we always follow it? Absolutely not. Right? There's just sometimes you just trip over something and it's like, this is just so cool. We didn't know it existed and we have to take a look at it. That always happens. Right? You can't, the universe of companies and invention and innovation, even in the tool space, is so broad and truly global at this point, that you always have to make room for interesting surprises. But on the whole, the businesses tell us everything from which technology classes they are going after to just more broadly the kinds of problems they're trying to solve, where they don't know what the tech is, but they'll say, hey, I need to decrease this XYZ byproduct and reaction by 90%. And they don't care how it happens. They just bring us the problem. To even the kind of deals they want to do, right? They'll say, I have money to do this. I do not have money to do Y. So don't bring me anything that looks like that. So it's this constant conversation and being very in touch and collaborative with your business partners because you serve their needs, right? Otherwise it's just too much to do, right? For us as individuals, we can be as creative as we want, but if we know it's going to fall flat from a technology perspective, from a funding perspective. It's just a waste of everybody's time.
So is a good way, I guess as a follow-up, is a good way for a startup to kind of understand where your real gaps are. Is it enough to, look at financial reports, maybe on your website, maybe there are forums that are speaking about this openly, or is it more, this is what you're developing, bring it to us, we will let you know if it is one of our interest areas?
I would say it's a very tough thing to do, particularly for a company like Thermo, where we have 4 different publicly call it groups, but we have, 40 or 50 different holding companies, right? And every cluster probably has a version of me. Some clusters do not have a version of me. So it's tough to know, looking at anything public, what our priorities are. A lot of us, we do get around, right? We're at all the conferences. We're at all the industry conferences like Bio that have nothing, kind of more broadly. The key is really to find the person or even the business where you think your technology is most applicable. Now, even that can be challenging, because I can look at a tech and go, I probably can live in 5 different places, and then I need to find the one place that's going to be the advocate for this. But the goal should still be, find one of those 5. Do I belong in high throughput sequencing? Do I belong in diagnostics? Is my value add in lab automation? And then find those 1 or 2 people that are really interesting. A very obvious place to start is actually with our sales teams. So if you're at a conference and there's a Thermo booth and there's a tech and you see yourself fitting in that workflow, talk to that rep, because that rep will get to me. It'll get to us, because that is actually one of our biggest channels of ideas, is our reps coming to us and saying, I saw this in a lab. I saw this company. They're a customer. You should talk to them. That's one of the easiest open doors to get to us. And then we can then say this does fit or that doesn't fit. Because I think looking at anything public, from our press releases to our analyst days, will not give you the granularity to know where to attack the system. For example, if our ELT says, hey, mRNA therapeutics is really important to us, that is such a broad statement about how we are planning to attack that whole ecosystem that there's no way to know whether you fit in or not. So try to spend a little time, hit us up on LinkedIn, hit our salespeople, and find try to find that specific entry point that is most relevant to you.
Thank you. I think that's really great advice. I hope everyone's taking notes if they haven't already gone this route. And Jeff or Tari, either of you wants to jump in on that kind of channel question and how to approach with anything to add to this?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
No, go ahead.
Jose has covered a lot of, I think, what I would say, right, is one of the best places to really get a bead on what is important to this potential strategic partner today, right? Because I think Jose and Jeff, we can all agree that our strategies, our priorities can change by the quarter, right? Or, all of a sudden, there'll be, a quote unquote wildfire burning, and it's like, we got to plug this gap within the next quarter, right? And if you can find us and talk to us in person and actually be a really nice, cool human being, we'll tell you what that wildfire gap is, right? And if you have the solution, then we're good, right? So I do agree with you, Jose, that a lot of stuff that's on the public websites it's a little archaic. It's meant to be vague in many ways on purpose, because there's no way you want another company's competitive intel, right, to be able to divine from a website what's going on. But if you and I have a relationship, I will tell you exactly what's important to my company today, next week, right? And what's going to immediately capture our interest and get people following up right away versus like, no, right? I'm one of the more candid people in my business, I think, where I'm just willing to just spill it all out because I don't want to waste your time and I don't want mine wasted either. Um, but we're not all created alike. So you're going to have to do your share of research and thinking and asking questions, right? So Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Yeah, really just to echo what's already been said. I have some friends who've gone through like the NSF I-Corps program, and I really like one of the aspects of going out and doing these types of informational interviews. And I forget what the numbers are, but it's kind of like go out and interview 50 people, right? Or some large number and go out there and like what was said already, go out, talk to folks that are in the space and doing it, and just really understanding where the trends are. It's definitely good to get in specifically as well, but also just understanding what the trends are, what folks in the field are thinking about. Maybe you can get a little insight into where things might be going as well. The other thing I was going to mention on kind of cutting through that noise, when I've sat in and helped with different search and eval and took part in that process, I usually come out of the gate with two questions for startups or companies that come through. The first is, what's your value statement, right? Really concisely tell me what your value is. And then I always ask, who's your competition and why should I go with you? And I'm looking for the folks I'm talking to understand who their competition is and be able to articulate that. It makes me really nervous when people tell me they don't have any competition, and I hear it way more than should make sense in a market of we're the only ones doing this, and I very rarely find that to be true. And then being able to articulate, look, these are the other folks in the area. But this is why we think that we're the ones to go with. So just 2 cents.
Thank you, Jeff. A couple more questions on kind of the overall strategy of partnering with strategics that I want to get to. One of them is, what do you need to see on your end to partner with an early stage company, knowing that this is not a finished product, right? So it's an early stage company. What do you really need to see in terms of milestone to move forward with a partnership of any kind, be it and it might differ, between a licensing deal or a distribution partnership and a development partnership. Naturally, there are differences, but what's kind of bringing them to the table for a discussion? Tari, do you want to start with this?
So like I said, I'm open to having a first conversation regardless of stage. I mean, obviously it needs to be more than just an idea, right? We are a conservative company, so in complete honesty, some sort of track record, even if it's not in our space, but if your technology was used to actually, help fuel a program, let's just say in an infectious disease, which we don't do at all, right? But it was successful to the point where it got into a clinical trial and everyone's nuts about it. It's like, okay, these guys have actually been through the mill once or twice before, and maybe you're interested in going into a big cardiometabolic disease area like heart disease, right? But something like that, you're going to want to go in with someone with the disease expertise and with the means to really have the resources to push it forward, right? Then that's very, very useful, right? I do get the question a lot, like, especially from the companies that have assets, right? What is it that you need to see? Obviously, having some proof of concept, preferably like, if it's something that can be used in animals, as much as we would like to prevent animal use, like, but it's to know that there's some maturity there in the company and a clear vision of, because this is my first question, right, Jeff, which is, what's it good for, right? So And, it's like, does it work? What's it good for? And is it better, cheaper, faster if I do it your way versus anyone else's, right? That's the constant questionnaire that we have in our heads, and we just ask it in different ways. I will tell you that having a very good non-confidential slide deck that is informative without being enabling is so key, right? If it's just big bubbles with fancy words that I can't wrap my head around, and I'm a generalist, right? I have a scientific background, but I'm a generalist, and if I can't wrap my head around it and communicate internally what it's about, I'm gonna be like, you guys are gonna have to help me, right? Explain this, but I can't get you a meeting, right? So you've really got to put your best foot forward with that. Because you also keep in mind is that it's my job to then take that deck and share it with the relevant, potential anchoring area or areas, right? And we are a global company. I've got people in Europe, Asia, etc. It has to be something that I can email with to multiple people quickly and then get their feedback, right? And it's the best of both worlds where they come back to me because like, oh my God, this is exactly what I've been thinking about doing. Get me that meeting, right? But without that, it's really hard, you guys.
Clarity is key. I appreciate that. Jose, are there any technical milestones that you would think are non-negotiable when looking at partnering with a company like Thermo Fisher and the likes of that you would not take a look at a company before they hit this specific milestone?
Yeah, so I'll echo what Tari was saying. So we'll always have an open door. Like we'll always talk to people. In general, I mean, you think about what we do, right? We sell platforms, enzymes, reagents. You can walk in any lab in the world, and we probably own 40% of it. So when we look to bring in new technologies, to what Tari was saying, really understand the value proposition, right? We see a lot of hammers looking for a nail, right? And so that is usually, look, I can do, let's think of high throughput sequencing for a second, or extraction. I can do 384 plex, and therefore I'm going to conquer the world with it. And I can tell you right away, that's probably not true, because there's a small segment of the market that would tackle that. Really understand the value proposition and the problem we're trying to solve. That has to be number one, regardless of the stage you're at. From a deal-making technical perspective, the ideal place for us to do a deal with someone is when the technology, whether it's a platform, a production system, or anything, is stable. That doesn't mean we don't want to see it at alpha. It means that it's better at beta and delta, because it tells us a couple of things. We care obviously if a technology works, but a technology can work at the alpha stage. But again, think about what Thermo is. We want to know that you've thought about margins. We want if you thought about scale. If you want to thought about production systems and capacity, right? Things that we start to think about when we think of taking a business that maybe sells 100 and we want to sell 10,000 of it. If you've already thought about those aspects of it, that helps. If you have customers who are using it, that's so kind of just like in the therapeutic side, I'd be calling KOLs who use the device. Here, if there are labs using your tech or alpha sites that are using it for free because you probably gave it away, that's always very helpful. But if I had to boil it down and summarize, one, know your value proposition. Two, show me a stable platform and show us that you've thought about scaling this business and what it would take. And thirdly, are there people that we can talk to who have used this tech? And one way to think about it is the most natural thing for us to do is to bring that tech into our lab, right? And if it's at the point where our scientists have to spend an inordinately large amount of time trying to figure out how to use it, it's probably not ready.
So can you put it in our hands and just let us run with it? So that's a good.
And there's always going to be some fiddling, right? We might have to create scripts, do some programming, optimize the reagents, but full breadboard systems don't generally work, right? It's got to be past that. And we see a lot of breadboard stuff. So
got it. And Jeff, I'm going to use the fact that you can wear two different hats. One is from the very early stage of companies that you get into the accelerator versus business units at Merck, and kind of how you think of partnerships there. So
Yeah.
maybe the same question with that.
Yeah. Sorry. What was can you repeat the exact original? I got so interested in what I was able to say, I forgot where we started.
What do you need to see in terms of milestones
The
to
milestones, right. Yeah.
able with someone and have a conversation or to move forward with?
Right. Yes, yeah. So the milestones and moving forward. So yeah, similarly, right? Like I think folks are always on my end, myself always happy to have that initial conversation. Milestones and what we look for to move ahead can be very variable. It I know this is a non-answer. It just depends on so much, right? It depends on who you're talking to, who the leadership is, what the context is, and kind of the bigger strategic picture, and where things need to be from a de-risking standpoint. I've seen things come in where the sentiment is, look, this is something that maybe we have experience in and it's a little risky. We want to see a phase 1 trial first before we're willing to get into it. Others seem more promising. Maybe it's in our wheelhouse. We can help out with some of the preclinical development work, so we're able to get in earlier. And then, of course, there's milestones tied to those things as they move on. I'd say, of course, I agree with everything that was said. The moving forward aspect, the only thing I would add, which I think was mentioned before too, is it is a real component, how easy a company is to work with, like what kind of partner they are. So I would just add that, that comes in the equation of, if you can, whatever stage you're getting in at, or what milestones you need to hit, or what you're thinking about moving forward, if you're a good partner that operates in good faith and is really genuine and not creating a ton of headaches for folks on the other side, that honestly goes a long way, in addition to everything else that's been mentioned.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to switch gears a little bit about talking about how to communicate with a potential partner when you found that this is a good target for you, and vice versa. You want to start the conversation. I guess my question would be: is there we talked a little bit about what you need to see from companies to start the conversation. So timing is obviously important. We touched on clarity of your value proposition. I think that's pretty obvious that you need to have that in place. What are is it a one and done? I will say, and we could do a quick survey, yay, nay. Is it a one and done? We approached you, we pitched, it wasn't really the right fit at this moment. Is that the place to stop, or should we go back to the drawing board, reiterate, think about where that fits maybe with other areas that you're working on, and come back? Is the door open even to these kind of conversations? Or in simple terms, if you've heard a no or not now, is it time to stop, or are there ways to come back to the table? Jeff, let's continue with you.
Yeah, so when you have those initial conversations, a lot of times timing is a massive aspect of it, right? And so it's very, very rarely, if ever, a no, right? It's a not right now, and as far as going back to the drawing board, I think often, it's fair to come back in 6 months and say, hey, look, we just checking in here, some updates from our end. This is what we showed you last time. We've got some preclinical data now. if you want to check it out. But just, giving you some updates if you're interested. Those types of check-ins can be valuable, or maybe like in a year or whatever the time frame is for you. Yeah, I mean, the thing to avoid is trying to like go around people, or trying to, sometimes the answer is a not right now, and then folks try to go to other, maybe like more senior leadership that was usually already looped in, and then they just start usually like they get looped in, and then it comes back down as okay, I don't know, Jeff handle this or whatever, and then saying we evaluated it, the team looked at it, not right now, and then they go back and they say, whatever, you don't know what you're talking about. So they go to someone else and they say, all right, I already sent it Jeff's way, I'm going to send it again. And then right, and it gets to be a bad situation. So those types of try to choose my words. I mean, just, trying those types of getting around people types of things I would avoid. But it's definitely, I always enjoy when companies say, hey, look, we chatted a few months ago, I got this cool update, here's what it is. So.
Oh, that's fair, and we'll touch on some of those communication faults, I would call them, in a bit. Jose, any response to Jeff's perspective?
Yeah. So same kind of answer, right? The door is never fully closed. We like to keep track of companies every 6 months or so and see how things are going. I would hope, though, that if we say not now, you talk to other people, right? In other words, right, talk to our competitors, talk to Danaher, talk to Agilent, talk to other stakeholders in the ecosystem and say, I'm hearing this from someone in the large cap. Do you agree? Because when we hear you, when we see you come back in 6 months, we're fully open to the conversation that says, hey, you're wrong. Right? I've talked to 5 other versions of you and they all like this. So where's there a disconnect, right? We're not just, our view of the world constantly changes. It is not static, and we'd love to learn from people. So take that not now and go talk to other people and get that feedback loop going. The other thing we see in our space, and maybe this is a little bit different therapeutics, the business models and the value propositions of having technology usually can be attacked in multiple places. So even though you start as an enabling diagnostics company, let's say the whole diagnostic industry just blows up and everything goes through phases, right? And so then you have to pivot, right? It's important to hear, it's not just, hey, my technology, I hit a technical milestone, I can now hit this kind of sensitivity. Sometimes it's important for hear, how has your business model changed? How are you rethinking your go-to-market strategy? Because that has implications for us and our partners and our competitors. So for the tool side, there's obviously technical milestones you have to hit, but the go-to-market strategy and the business model are equally important, because stuff just changes all the time, right? Regulation changes, supply chain constraints changes, and it's helpful to know that as well.
Especially, like you said, with enabling tools, that can be even the intended application, and so the basis of this conversation can really take a different turn. I guess we're it's already been an hour, so we've been flying through this conversation. It's been really fun talking. I guess maybe kind of a last question on that topic. Jose, you touched on a pretty sensitive topic. Talk to others. Talk to other strategics. I know some of our companies have asked. We're talking to several strategics. How do we leverage that to have conversations that will position us better? What would be your advice to these companies as they're going through evaluating different strategics? And is there a place for really this kind of creating a competitive environment, if for the lack of a better phrase, in these negotiations and conversations? I'll turn this to everyone and see who wants to start.
I think it's a different answer depending on the kind of deal you're trying to do. On the M&A side, it's always competitive in our space. And even if we don't know a company, we're going to get the call anyway, 9 times out of 10. But I would say in general, I would encourage everybody to, one, like I said earlier, find your stakeholders, find your business, and let them watch you grow. Even if we're not doing a deal at the B round or a C round or even the D round, us watching the evolution and us being informed that evolution allows us to decide whether or not there's a play. And I think that that does feed in M&A, right? That does get to that point. But that starting point can be hard, right? Where do you enter the ecosystem? So I would say develop those relationships over time.
Thank you. Tari, you want to jump in on that?
So if you are truly in that position where your technology, your opportunity is so compelling that you have multiple unsolicited, interest, right? You are faced with a decision, right? If you're especially a small company, you're not going to be able to play with everybody, right? And if you come to me, and I would simply urge, be candid and be honest and be courteous, right? I have no problem with someone saying, listen, I've got 5 other parties really be interested. We'd love to work with you. Can you go back to like whatever team is particularly relevant, and we want to give you a chance, right? That's a beautiful way to do it, right? Then I can legitimately go and say, like, guys, if we don't go in now, we could get shut out at least for another year, right? Because I'm willing to advocate for that, especially if the opportunity is that good. If you lie, I will find out. This is a small world. And if I find out, we're done, right? You don't have to, right? As Jose said, you evolve, we grow, we watch, and things change. You change, we change. It's a long game. And so leverage it if it's there as a way to try to maybe at least get a decisive response, but don't make it up just because you're trying to get a deal done. So integrity is everything in our business.
And I'd hope that that's common sense in every relationship in life, including and definitely in business practices. Like I said, I would like to continue this for hours, but I would like to part with our live stream audience now, because we are moving into the second phase of the webinar, where we have an opportunity for our cohort members to ask specific questions to the panelists. And so I'd like to thank the public viewers of this webinar. Thank you for joining us. We'll come back on August 2nd with another webinar. So follow our LinkedIn page for more information, and hope to see you in our next webinars.